the third talk in a series called Everything You Ever Learned Is Wrong, and the why and how of that. And my name is Isaac David Fries, and welcome to the conversation, which is ongoing. So, go ahead.
Okay, so can I go ahead and say what I'm saying?
Sure.
Okay, so what I was saying is I went to school and this girl said there was no Santa Claus, and I said I didn't believe that because I knew my mother wouldn't lie to me.
Sure.
And so I went home and I asked my mother, and then she told me there wasn't, and she showed me my teeth, and there was no tooth fairy, and there was no Easter bunny, and there was no nothing, and something collapsed in me. There was nothing magical about life. It was just bland. It was just bland or something. Like the rug got pulled out.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's when you discovered that your reality was fiat. It had been constructed externally.
And I was looking at all the other place as being what was real because that was what felt good and magical and No. What happened is that you realized that you betrayed your own truth for an external truth. And my mother was part of it.
And your mom was part of it. And then suddenly the thing comes, what else of me has been lost, and will I ever retrieve it, and where did it go, and who am I?
I was kind of done at that point.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. So you may have gotten done right to here, So the nature of these dialogues is to take away, not necessarily put in what's true, but take away what's false and see what's left. That's the play. And as a matter of fact, there's a spiritual stream out of India done by, there's all these wonderful sadhus in India, and you can tell a wonderful sadhu from a charlatan by how much money it takes to keep him pumped up, So, which is, by the way, in terms of a human scale community must be able to define spiritual reality from political movement. Must be. Can you see it? Can you see it? No. Okay. Because the great spiritual traditions that we live in, so that's Judaism, Christianity, Mohammedanism, and let's say Hindu or Buddhist and stuff like that. These are state-sponsored or state-permitted spiritual institutions. So the question is, will the state allow a spiritual institution to operate that undermines the power of the state? Will it?
I don't know.
Okay. What happened to Christ?
Well, he was taken down.
Right, for what? What did he challenge, actually?
The system.
What did he actually challenge? He challenged the money. He challenged the money. Because that's what
you mean
the crazies worship.
Yeah,
that's what they worship. The money changers in the temple. That's actually what they worship, because they worship the power. They worship power, and money is the most. It's the most easy way to finesse the kind of power that's operating around you by just floating it in money, and you make it look and you make everything look as if everyone is trying to find some place of sanctuary or some place of survival in the money stream. But really, what everyone is doing is they're trying to find a place of survival in the power stream. Because if you step off that place, you're wiped away.
Yeah, they say you have to have a job.
Yeah.
To be connected.
Right. And generally you have to produce something that has really nothing to do with the continuity of normal life. You're basically doing something to undermine life on the planet, that kind of thing. So we're talking, as a matter of fact, the way to see the structure of reality, or the structure of a SIP community, they give it away, is by looking at a chessboard. When you look at a chessboard, they give it away, you know? I'll put it here. When you look at a chessboard, can you follow me? When you look at a chessboard, you got this kind of thing. You got these guys here, and you got the checkerboards, you know? You got the checkerboards. And then you got the rook in the corner, and then you've got the bishop, and then you got the knight, and then you got the queen, then you got the king, and then you got the same thing on the other side, right? And then in front are the pawns, right? Right? So basically what that reveals, the story behind the checkerboard is that it comes from Persia, and that the intellectual that brought that game to the royalty of Persia only asked for a sack of grain or something for every one of the squares in a board. I think there are 64 of them or something like that. But asked for a sack of grain to be doubled at every square, you know. And the royalty accepted that bargain because the game was so seductive and wonderful and interesting. And but when it was calculated, what that meant, it meant that the inventor of the game owned the whole country when you run those numbers, you know, in terms of its power. So basically it's saying that this little visual represents the power of an entire nation or empire or whatever. So what does it take to operate the state? You know, it takes the royalty, the king and queen, but right up there are the bishops, which is the state-sponsored religions. You know,
they're at the ends, right?
Well, no, they're pretty close to royalty. They're very close.
Okay, the knight, and then the what?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it's the other way. I think it's the bishop right next to the bishop right next to the king and queen, and then the knight after that. Right.
Guarding them.
Right, exactly. Well, the knights are the officer corps, because the rank and file and all the people in the community are these people. They're the sacrificers.
They're standing in between, protecting.
Yeah, they're thrown away. You know,
right. They're disposable.
They're totally disposable. Right. So right next to the king and queen, the easiest way to mask power and to articulate power is through the state-sponsored religion, because they dress up the will of the aristocracy as the will of God. You know, and that's that 10,000 BC story. You know, and then if that fails, then you have the officer corps comes in, and that's that book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, because when the economics of the promise doesn't work, they send in the jackals, the assassins. The assassins invariably come from military training. They always come from military.
And they're the knights?
They're the knights, right. And then the redoubts would be the armored rooks, the actual towers that are the PowerPoints. No, they're the PowerPoints where the aristocracy and the ruling class rule from. They're armed castles. You know, that's their place. It's actually the city. There's actually, the way it works is that people are born into the human community that are damaged. They're genetically damaged. And they do not have an empathic connection to the humanity around them. They just have, and they have no limits. They have no pity. And they just take what they want without any conscience and without any remorse and without any regret. And They're stone killers, and they become kings. Killers and kings. Killers and kings. Killers and kings. It's in the language. They become kings. And then they create a knighthood of lieutenants around them to dominate the countryside and bring in the sustenance of their life, because they don't produce anything. They only threaten those that do not serve them with extinction. So that's exactly how it works.
No, it's interesting to hear what you're saying, because this is the first time since you've talked I've gone back into my childhood, because at 9 I started going through the religion.
Yes.
I went to the Catholic Church. I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't Catholic.
Yeah.
I went and did communion. I did the whole thing.
Yes.
By the time I was 14, I was into the Hindu religion.
Yes.
I went through every religion.
That's fantastic.
I was looking for something.
Yes.
There was no fairy tale things.
Right.
I was looking through the religions until I saw they were meeting us.
They're all fiat. They're all fiat.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's like it's weird. I've never thought of it before, but I mean, I actually was searching for the truth as
Right.
as a child,
Right.
as a small child.
Right.
And I went through all the religions. I mean,
Right.
I just did them on my own.
Right. But
And I
here's the
went back
beauty.
to the Catholic because it was
Yeah.
mysterious. They were
Right.
talking in some other language. They were dressed up.
Right.
Well, what is this? Who are
Right.
these people?
Right. And here's the beauty of that. Here's the beauty of that. Is these characters, and we'll get more into the chessboard. It's really interesting. The chessboard is really interesting. These characters cannot sponsor a state religion that protects them and makes them, what is that term? Does anyone remember that term? No. Remember that term from feudal Europe and England about the right of kings? What was that? Remember that? The right of kings? The right of kings? What does that say to you? The right of kings. The full term is the divine right of kings.
Like they have the right.
They have the mandate of heaven.
Heaven.
They have the mandate of heaven, and that's actually what the emperors of China call it, the mandate of heaven.
Yeah.
And when heaven withdraws the mandate, the empire falls. But then a new group of killers and kings comes forward, and they have the mandate
Yeah.
because they are more efficient killers.
Well, and Marjorie Kelly wrote a great book called The Divine Right of Capital.
There you go.
And she was saying that if we could only see that it's the same as
Yeah.
the divine right of kings, that
Yeah.
it's just as non-existent.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like somehow who gave them the.
We did.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
We
Empower
went
them.
with it.
We empower them, and the reason we can empower them, why can? Before we
Well,
could
they have the blood.
Right, yeah, right.
They have the blood.
And that is what? That is fiat, right? That's part of the story. Their blood is like.
Special.
Their blood is like.
Blood of heaven.
There are guys out there, working on stone walls.
Right.
Their blood is just as royal as the most blue-blooded British aristocrat, that can trace his blood all the way back to Christ Jesus, which is of course a lie. But that's what they claim. So, but human blood is precious. It's really, really precious because it represents the capacity of human beings to bring life out of the earth. That's why there's this other myth, the vampire myth, of non-productive, parasitic, human-looking individuals that live on human blood. Those are the SIPs, the criminally insane billionaire psychopaths who produce nothing. And therefore they need human populations to sustain them. And the bigger the population, the more luxuriant their sustenance, and the more obscenely opulent their sustenance. And when they drain a population or a continent, they implode. They crash the continent and the population down on itself. And for the previous 100 to 200 years, they have been preparing their next nest egg, which is their next empire, and they move their empire. For instance,
That's where we're going to Russia next.
not we, they are.
I mean,
That's right.
well, the country
That's right.
energy's moving.
That's right. Exactly.
Not we. But
Exactly. So, like when you look at that, you'll see, when you look at the historicals, and like Alan Watt has the historical record, you'll see it. For a century or more, The Roman aristocrats spoke Greek.
They spoke what?
Greek.
Oh, Greek.
Because they had crashed Greece in upon itself. They had taken everything Greece had to offer. There was nothing left. The population of Greece was not big enough for their ambition. So once it was vampired, nothing left, empty, desertified, turned into a desert, They had prepared already Rome, and they created all these myths to prepare the divine Romulus and Remus, being fed by wolves, becoming the blood of the aristocrats that followed these divine twins that founded Rome.
So the myths, where do they stand with the religions?
Okay, well, the point is that you're not going to be able to sell a state-sponsored religion that is completely useless and nonsense, and any kid can bust through it. So everyone has to have value and gold in it. And now, because of the experience that you have, and everything that you've read and researched and investigated yourself, now you can look back at all of that spiritual searching that you've done and pull the gold out of it, because there was value there, and throw away the rest. That's the value of it. There had to be gold, otherwise people wouldn't buy it. No human beings wouldn't buy it. There had to be something good about it. Generally, therefore...
That's making it worth something.
Yeah, so that people that would buy into it, they would buy into it because of they vibrated to something in there, For instance, all of Christianity is about goodness and compassion and sharing and sweetness and light and
punishment.
Yeah, how could that be? Right, exactly. See, once you buy that, then you buy the rest of it. Now it's about the Crusades and killing off all those horrible Muslims.
Bad people.
Yeah, and Christ has said it's okay to do that, like that. And that shatters your mind, you see. So, a human skeleton.
Caitlin was telling us.
Yeah. So, and that's true of Buddhism and Vedanta and Hinduism and Judaism and Christianity and everything. They have to have gold in there for normal people to say, that makes sense, okay. That's useful, that's valuable, But then you have to shatter your mind to then accept the rest of it, A corrupt priesthood that sexually violates children.
Right. Owns all the property.
Owns all the property. A God that needs money. You get that, but people get it. People's mind is so shattered.
Yeah, God must need
money.
Yeah.
God needs money. That kind of stuff. So when you look at the chessboard, then the chessboard actually reveals everything. It reveals the structure of the state, and it also reveals the operation of the continuity of the state. How does it reveal the operation of the continuity of the state? What piece there can go anywhere and represent the state and is a powerful piece that can move anywhere on the board? What piece is that? It's the queen. Why is that so? It's so because she carries the genes of the bloodline.
Egg.
She carries the egg, exactly. Exactly. She carries the genes. She's the dolly. She's the dolly. She is the continuity of the aristocracy from empire to empire and century to century until they come to an end game that was posited by Aristotle, actually. And Plato. That's why these guys are so important.
But so often if she didn't bring forth a boy, they
get another one. Yeah, well, they get another dolly. Why are they called? Why are vehicles? Exactly. You push them around. They're carrying something.
Right.
They carry. Dolly Madison, the sheep dolly.
The sheep doll.
There's Dolly the sheep, who was one of the first cloned sheep, grown in a creche, artificially inseminated and grown out of in artificial conditions and stuff. Very important idea to get. Concept to get, right. She's carrying a very important concept, So the queen moves in, the queen represents the continuity of generations, But no matter, even if every one of these, if all of the serfs and all of the soldiers and all of the people that were represented by the pawns are sacrificed, and all of the pieces, including the queen, are sacrificed, is the game lost? No.
You still have the board.
No.
It's only when
You
the
still have
king
the
It's
board.
only when the king.
Oh, when the king is sacrificed.
It's only when the king is taken that the game is over.
And then it has to create a new one.
That's where the game is over.
Okay.
Whoever takes the king owns the board. Right? Right? So there are games when you watch chess masters play. There are chess masters will play against each other, and it'll take them, I think, like 120 moves, or I don't know what, 70 moves to finally
Strategy.
one to capture another, and take the king. But if a really competent chess player plays against a really kind of novice chess player, he can take the king in 3 moves. And game's over. It doesn't. All these other pieces can be in place. Game's over as soon as the king's down. Right? So they have revealed, the SIPs have revealed, game over.
It's like that movie, The Queen or something, or whatever it was, the Queen Elizabeth, that movie Elizabeth, with the guy that kind of was behind the scenes. He really ruled everything. He did the whole thing. She was like out of it.
Right.
Yeah, it was like he was the maneuvering factor that
right.
you didn't even, he was invisible in a sense. He
Right.
killed who needed to be killed.
Right.
And
Right.
Did you see that movie, Elizabeth?
But you actually are observing reality.
Right.
Because the way that they have deduced, remember that we are allowed to go into libraries and read history, right? But we are not allowed to go into archives that actually carry the actual record.
The truth.
The actual record. So the only glimpse that we have into the archive is if every once in a while you could get a text or something from people that have been in there, and they write memos or they write memoirs, and the memoir kind of gets away from them. For instance, Zbigniew Brezhnev, what was it? Zbigniew Brzezinski. Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote a book called Between Two Ages, and he wrote that, I think, in the 80s or something. It's been a while, That book is like $300 or more on the internet now. It's hard to get. It's hard.
What's it called?
It's called Between Two Ages.
Between Two Ages.
So what are the 2 ages that he's talking about?
The one that's coming and the one that was?
Yeah, so what are they? How are they clocked? How are they identified? Any idea?
Is one the United States?
No, the ages. The ages would be.
ages. Dark ages?
No, we are in the Piscean age.
Oh,
aren't we? Are we
Piscean
right?
and Aquarius.
And the Aquarian. We're going to the Aquarian
Okay.
age. You see?
Yeah.
Remember
Christian and now the
the Gaian,
Pagan.
the pagan. Right. So we are between 2 ages, right? The ages occur every 2,200 years or so, right? That's when we move to another part of the heavens, and we are in a different.
or Kali Yuga or something.
Well, a Kali Yuga is something else.
Oh, okay.
Now, we can talk about that.
Okay.
So, the archives are a memory of what it really, not a memory, but an actual record of what it means to manage and maintain empires. And it's selected individuals are identified in the university system, which is as far as we are allowed to operate, but selected individuals are identified in that system, maybe because they're brilliant, and approachable and malleable and ambitious, and they can be turned, Some people cannot be turned. Other people can be turned, So, because most people don't start out saying, I'm going to sell my soul for rock and roll or anything. They don't go to, you don't, they kind of, they have challenges, and, and they want to do this or that with their life, and they just keep hitting walls, but they're very smart, and then some people get like little offers, and they say, thanks a lot, but no thanks, I don't think I can do that. But other people get the same offers, and they say, okay, I can do that.
I want my kids to go to college.
Yeah. I'll take a lifelong a position in a think tank where all of my, I get like hundreds of $1,000s a year to game theory, and my kids go to the best schools guaranteed, and I get my retirement, and I get all the medical, they get all the medical, all doors are open, and my kids are upwardly mobile forever, and nothing ever happens to me in court or anything like that, or my kids and stuff like that, and blah, 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 Sure, I can do that. Then they're allowed to get into the archives, and they actually see how empires operate, And what they discover is like when you read Brzezinski, Between Two Ages, he says things like, about people, he says, people, what we starve them, we burn them, we kill them, and they just turn around and eat their dead. They're never a threat to us. He says that we're coming to a time where people are going to be so dumbed and confused that they're going to need an expert on television to tell them whether to put their raincoat on or not, even if they see it's raining outside, which is actually what's happening.
Right.
You get the weather, you get the Weather Channel to tell you what's going on. You can just look out the window, You get people you get women and men who are natural caretakers being told how to take care of their own kids. And of course the kids go haywire as a result, because they're told exactly opposite what's necessary to actually raise their kids. That's where Spock comes in. Dr. Spock comes in. Because at the end of his life, Dr. Spock said, "What have I done? I have raised a generation of monsters."
Oh, because everybody followed him.
Yeah. And when Spock started writing his stuff, the SIPs, the institutions that support the artificial structure of the culture, said, "This is our guy. This is exactly what we want."
It was almost like...
We want parents to go exactly against their instincts in how to raise their kids.
Right.
Yeah. So you get a bunch of kids that have no limits, that have no limits placed upon them in terms of their wanting, their behavior, their dignity, their appetite, and so forth.
What did Dr. Spock teach?
Say again?
What did Dr. Spock teach?
He was a pediatrician.
Right.
So he taught raising kids,
What was the core aspect of raising kids?
Oh, you don't raise your voice to them. You don't slap them on the ass, because that traumatizes them for all their life.
Yeah, but everything was regimented by the clock.
By the clock, right? You don't feed them.
You don't feed them when they're hungry. You don't feed them when they're crying.
Right.
You don't feed them when your breast's full.
Right.
You don't even feed them breast
You
milk.
don't feed them breast milk and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's all like by every 4 hours or or
Right.
And but Einstein kind of said the same thing. What did he create when he died? Like he had created this bomb that.
Hey, welcome. Come on in. Join the discussion. Yeah. Well, so if everything is fiat, what about Einstein?
What about what?
Einstein. If everything is fiat, what about Einstein?
And they created him?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Well.
Exactly. So what does he represent? What does Einstein represent if he is authorized by the state?
Then he created it being okay to kill people, or by the bomb, or by the nuclear power of the dividing of the atom.
Partially that, but he also creates strength for something that they've been working on for 100 years already, which is a homeland for the Jews, because they're such an extraordinary people, producing people like Einstein, right?
Oh, is that what he created?
Well, he was part of the value set upon the Jewish community. Now that doesn't mean that the Jewish community is not valuable. It is tremendously valuable. It's as valuable as any other human community. But Einstein was part of the sale, the marketing of that idea. Now that marketing was massive, and he was only a small piece of it, but a pretty important piece of it. And he also represented, by moving into Institute for Advanced Research there at Princeton, that was a think tank that paralleled the think tanks of Eton and Cambridge, and that were the operating system behind the Queen that you were seeing. See, you were seeing that man who was manipulating, a policy. He was really representing a think tank that was gaining for him and informing him that this kind of state policy 100 years from now will create this kind of result. So he was being given the strategy, and then he would manipulate state policy, and the Queen or the King would be the figurehead representing it, right? So now, knowing that the end of the game, even if it's 3 moves to a checkmate of a king, do you play chess? Do you know chess? What is it? What is the minimum moves to a checkmate? I think it's 4 moves or 3 moves if you do them right, isn't it? Isn't there some little strategy where it's 4 moves to a checkmate if you move just right?
Well, let's see. I played chess probably about 15 times in my life. I think there's only a handful of moves that you can make.
Right.
And there is a checkmate.
Right. If you're playing with a novice.
No, before you call checkmate, you have to know for sure.
Right.
That
if you're playing with a novice, you can take them out in 3 moves, and then when you do that, the empire is yours. It doesn't matter that the rest is standing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So now,
I was just listening to the Savage Nation as I was coming here.
I want to hear that, but let me just finish this point, and that point is this point. Remember, in the Pyramid of Power, we're talking about, right here is the eye, right? The eye represents, what does the eye represent? What does the eye represent on the top of the pyramid?
Well, it's the all-seeing eye.
So what does it represent in the structure of a state?
Control of everyone.
What does it represent?
Watching everyone?
National security state, correct.
Oh, national security.
You're correct. So all of the actual autonomy, all of the actual control of a state is in its national security apparatus. That's right below the capstone, right? So when we look at the Pyramid of Power, which is beautifully done in that book, The Brotherhood of Darkness, it's one of the best evocations and constructions of the Pyramid of Power by Stanley Monteith, who is a beautifully motivated, completely and totally Christian person. So his dream is a Christian dream, Mm-hmm. But so you take the gold out of there, and you can leave the theocracy behind, because there's a lot of gold in there, as there is gold everywhere. As a matter of fact, there is a stream of information around a book called The Synagogue of Satan. The Synagogue of Satan. It's actually who said that? You are a synagogue of Satan. Who said that?
I don't know.
Never heard of it.
I never heard of it either.
Huh?
I don't know.
Christ.
Really?
Christ said that.
Really?
Yeah.
What was he doing?
What was he doing?
He was setting himself up to be crucified, to be killed. Because he was saying that the synagogue was not a place of spiritual sanctuary, but of money changing and manipulation of the culture and the aggrandizement of the power of the priesthood and the use of...
So that's what he called the temple.
Yeah, that's what he called the temple.
Oh.
Synagogue of Satan.
Huh.
Now, who was Satan? What did he call? Yeah, well, what did Christ call Satan? He said, "You're a liar and the father of lies."
Oh, the father of lies.
That's right. You're a liar and the father of lies. Right? So that's gold. I mean, that's important stuff that you can pull out of the Christian tradition. These understandings, because that's all authorized to be released. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. So that's authorized to be released. So a book is written called The Synagogue of Satan, right? But that book, unlike Monteith's book, which is the ascendancy of Christ in this darkness that has enveloped the human spirit, and how Christ can be the light to release people from this. And you have to find the gold in that, because you can find the gold in that. In the Brotherhood of Satan, there's a lot of gold in there too, Because they say that the problem that we're all having now is that the Jews run the money and own the whole world. They own the whole world, everything they own. And if we can get the Jews under control, we'd all be happy again. That's the synagogue of Satan. But there's tremendous value in the book. Not that part, because the power which is in the aristocracy, they have to articulate themselves. They have to express themselves through some kind of bureaucracy and some kind of particularly financial bureaucracy, right? Because it's finances that they use before they bring the guns out, right? Before they bring the guns out, they try to buy you off. That's the whole point of Perkins, right? The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Before they send in the assassins and jackals, they just try to buy you off,
Right.
So they get you to work for it. Right.
Get you.
Right. So they have determined in the think tanks to put in a group to run the money. So if things go haywire, that group will be blamed. So who was the group to run the money?
The Jews?
The Jews, yeah. So you'll always see at the head of the Federal Reserve, there's a Jewish guy, At the head of the banks that made the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve here, the Treasury, it's always Jewish guys.
Where does the
Not right now, Paulson is running the Treasury, but before.
2012 thing fit in, or the 2012 thing about the vibration lifting of the planet, or being in the light? I mean, what's that? Is that part of the illusion, or is that true?
Well, remember what we said about the money.
Between the ages.
Well, remember what we said about the money, right?
What?
That it's fiat.
Right.
And that the money creates the mainstream, does it not?
Well, so far.
Yeah. So if the money is fiat and the money creates the mainstream information, what's going to be in the mainstream information?
Well, if there's not money.
If money is fiat, if money is false, and it creates the matrix, it creates the mainstream,
You mean to keep the
then
matrix
everything in the
right?
mainstream is false. Right?
Right.
So there you have the Mayan calendar, and you have 2012, and you have the supernatural, and you have vampires, and you have the occult, and you have the gargoyles on the churches, and you have the occult symbols and the all-seeing eyes and all of that. It's all part of the illusion. It's part of the illusion. And while you are
But aren't we really
bound by the spell of the illusion,
Yeah.
what are you as identified in the Matrix film?
They're feeding off of you.
Correct. So what actually what does Morpheus tell Neo who he is? He says, Neo, who are you? Who are you? What are you? A battery. He points to a battery. You're just energy, man. Forget about the fact that you're a human being, created by some unimaginable.
Or just energy to use.
That's right. That's right. And when the energy runs down, out. Get another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just throw it away. Get another one.
It's that bleak, huh?
Well, look what's going on.
I know. I know.
If you want to ask how bleak it is, ask any pod of porpoises or whales that have been run ashore because they're running submarine sonic experiments someplace. And when that information is brought to the admirals that are running those operational games, the guy says, I don't give a damn about any whales or porpoises.
We're not doing it.
No.
Well, they'll say where they're not.
No, they actually admitted they have.
They do?
Yeah, they said, but
this
is national security. This is national security.
Which is above everything.
Above everything, exactly.
Just right under the cap.
That's right. So now let's talk about the cap. The cap represents not even people. They're not even called people. They're called interests. It's so interesting. That was a kind of a chilling, interesting kind of clarity once that came to me. That they don't even consider themselves people. They consider themselves interests. But we're talking about 300
The 300.
guys. We're talking about 300.
Oh.
That film, The 300.
I didn't see that film.
Yeah. Theoretically, it represents 300 Greeks at Thermopylae stopping millions of Persians, or delaying them long enough for the rest of the Greeks to come up and close the gap and keep us from being a pagan Persian culture and a Greek Christian culture. You know, that's what happened at Thermopylae. That's why it's so important. You know, theoretically, that's why it's so important. You know, but in reality, the why it came out right now, you know, is where do these films come from? Is anyone interested in the Greeks who stood at Thermopylae actually now? No. So where do these films come from? Is anyone actually interested in all these films about the British aristocrats? Like the Duchess and all this shit that comes around. You know, people running around in high-waisted, gorgeous dresses, you know, and speaking perfect Etonian English about nothing. You know, while thousands, well, thousands and millions of people are cutting their lawns with their grass, with their teeth. You see them because when they shoot the demesne, you know what the demesne is. Yeah. What happened? They remember there are think tanks that are preparing the culture 200 years ahead. So there was a period in the transformation of Britain into a world-class empire, where they anticipated the coming of the industrial revolution, right? And this was done at the highest levels of the aristocratic arrangement, because the aristocrats made a contract among themselves, and that contract was called. Anyone know what the name of that contract is? The aristocrats of England. It's called the Magna Carta.
Well,
right?
That's a long time before the revolution.
That's right.
That was in Spain?
Yeah,
That
right.
was in Spain?
No, it was Britain.
Oh, it was Britain. Okay.
Yeah. But it's set up, here's what it's set up. It's set up that the king could do whatever he wanted to the pawns and all these, but he couldn't do it to his lieutenants. He couldn't do things to their wives and eat their children and take their property, and he had to confer and stuff like that, and he limited the divinity of the king. So it kind of curbed his ability to kill. Basically, what you're talking about is the ability to kill. You know, and the king wrote off. He accepted the terms. You know, against, of course, against the will of his bloodline, because he would have lost everything if he didn't, because there would have been so the Magna Carta, and the Magna Carta theoretically is the basic document for the Constitution and a whole bunch of other instruments that created modern states. The Magna Carta was that limitation of the power, of the absolute power of the aristocracy. So since once they fell to a standoff called the Mexican standoff, which means that you cannot what does a Mexican standoff mean?
Nobody move. They don't make a move.
Why?
Because they're equally able to kill each other.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
That's a Mexican standoff. Exactly. That's the only time power will back off, is when it realizes.
Truce.
Yeah. It realizes that it will lose its being if it moves lethally against the power that it's facing. So then it looks for a truce and stuff like that. But then always, the nature of power is
To not let go.
it can never let go. Also, that it's always looking for a way to consolidate and expand itself. Therefore, these guys at the very top, these interests at the very top, are, even though they are Magna Carta kind of cooperating in terms of the rest of humanity, they are always jockeying against each other, and they know it. They know it because
They're not united.
they're united against humanity, but they know that they cannot show weakness among each other. And therefore,
They'll get eaten.
they'll get eaten alive instantly. Therefore, what does that mean? What does that mean? If fearsome power realizes that it cannot show weakness, because then it will be devoured by another fearsome power, what does that mean, actually? How does that translate in terms of behavior?
Well, they're always on guard and separate and against each other.
Yeah. It also means that the more pitiless ferocity they show, the more they prove their right to sit at the table.
So So they can't be sensitive or compassionate or anything like that.
They can't. They have to show. That's what Stalin said. Remember what Stalin said? I did it in another talk. Stalin said that if you kill 1 or 2 people or 5 people and you're caught, they take you out and shoot you or hang you. But if you kill 5 million people, then they take you to Stockholm and give you the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, and that's the recognition. That's the recognition that ferocious. Hi, come on in. That's the recognition that ferocious power is the only kind of power that can sit at the table of policy.
It's like the shark's tale, when all the sharks were together. I don't know if you ever saw that, all the sharks were together. And the one shark that was a vegetarian, you know, they were doing him in. That was funny. But they could all sit at the table, the ones that killed everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that plays over and over again as a way to get you to sign on to that reality when it's actually another fiat. That's just another fiat, right? So, back to the pyramid of power, right? So now we have interests, right? We don't even have people. And that's actually a good way to see them, you know, because they're not people, you know?
They're not human.
They're not human. No, they're not human. They are man. And actually, man, they're sips. They're man. So they're not human, they're man. And you can see that in Genesis. In Genesis. When you read Genesis and you understand what you're reading, you realize that that's not the beginning of the world of humanity. It's the end of the world of humanity and the beginning of the world of manity, of man with slaves. Adam and Eve, you know, are slaves. You know. So and that's a joke that they do all the time, by the way. They give this illusion, it's a joke among themselves, where they give the illusion of something, and it's exactly the opposite to what they are, to what you're expected to believe. And I'll show you how that works too. That's really interesting. But the point is this. So we have interests there at the top of the pyramid of power. 300. Those 300 are worth, in terms of their total value, in terms of what they're holding, in terms of their holdings, they're worth what the next 2 billion people are worth. 300 what the next 2 billion people are worth. So we're talking about every individual interest at the top of that pyramid is worth hundreds of trillions of dollars if that were translated into dollars. You know, hundreds of trillions of dollars. So that's the king, right? So now they've given away what the end game is, right? So the end game is not about bringing armies of demonic military assassins and mercenaries and exquisitely equipped armies to their knees. No, the end game is 6 million human beings, 300 guys. Without them, there's nothing here. So all goes away. See, so
they're holding it together.
They're holding it together. They fund. It's called investment and disinvestment. Right. They understand that what the great foundations. Who knows about the Reese Commission? Anyone? You should take a look at that. There's videos, all kinds of videos of it. The Reese Commission in the 1940s and 50s commissioned a banker actually, to look at what the foundations were doing. We're talking about the great foundations. We're talking about Rockefeller, Ford, Carnegie, and some other foundations.
Is this Norman Dodd?
Dodd, yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, I can summarize it and hopefully make everybody understand it, because sometimes I'm not that great at this. But Norman Dodd was instructed he was a banker.
Correct.
And he was instructed by the, I believe, State Department to go investigate some foundations.
Correct.
His first assignment was to find out what their intentions were. And their intentions were to...
So this is his conclusion. Go right to his conclusion.
Their intentions were to change how history was written.
Right.
And he went to the two most dominant teachers in the country. Mm-hmm. And he asked them, would you change the way in which mm-hmm. They actually asked them. Mm-hmm. This entity asked them, would you change the manner in which you teach history? Mm-hmm. And they said, no, we will not. Mm-hmm. So they were able to create a program called Rhodes Scholarship.
Right, right.
And this was in England.
Right.
And
now that preceded the Rees Commission and the Dodd Foundation. But let me step on
right.
what you started.
Sure.
At that time, we were talking about the 40s and 50s. Who were the great challenges and enemies of the American dream and the American way?
Russians?
The Russians and the Chinese. Right?
Yeah.
So what Dodd discovered is that the foundations, the intention of the foundations, was to transform the American system into the Russian and Chinese system, which is basically a system of animal farm, where the human beings, the people, the citizens of the country, were instruments of the state, and the state decided how they lived, who they lived, if they lived or died, what they earned, what they ate, everything, every aspect. There was no freedom whatsoever. Everything was determined by great bureaucracies. And this is what Dodd discovered. The foundations were doing tax-free. Tax-free, So that is that discovery indicates that all of the efforts of the national security state is to basically protect this pyramid of power, and using all of these agencies. As you look at the pyramid of power, there's agencies called 1,000 points of light, and they have 8 names and more names and more names, and there's secret brotherhoods, and they're Masons, and they're Illuminati, and they're daughters of ISIS, and there's daughters of the Eastern Star, and there's Boy Scouts, and there's hundreds and thousands of institutions and foundations and all that, but they're all authorized. They all work this way. They all work this way, And you'll see in Monteith's book how...
That's like why they start having brownies and stuff in grammar school, so you'll get into the system and see the hierarchy and be part of it.
Yes, exactly.
Get your badges.
Yes, you get your badge. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And how you would be recruited if you have talent, to be taken beyond the library system into the archival system. So we go back to the archival system. If you are seen as having talent, and you get into the archives, then you see how empires are really managed and how they appear to rise and fall, And what they have discovered over the millennia is that every couple of thousands of years, people start getting together and have conversations like this conversation that we're having, And that busts the matrix. And they cannot have 6 billion people actually doing an end run and directing themselves at 300 people. They cannot have that. So they bring the age down. That's Brzezinski, between 2 ages. And the ages are identified by, how are the ages identified? If we are...
Astrological sign.
Right, by constellations, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, and if you buy the constellations, the names of the constellations, and that there are ages, if you buy all that, then what?
Then you're in.
If you buy that, then you are seduced to believe that the Mayan calendar is true, that the 2012,
right.
You are disarmed to believe that this is the heavenly purpose, this is the heavenly plan, as the galaxy, as the Earth and the planets moves around in this spiral galaxy.
But it is moving.
It is moving. But what you determine, the purpose of that movement is whoever controls the determination and defines what that movement is controls the thinking of the people who buy that. You know, for instance, if someone defines your God for you, they own you.
But there's all the slaves under that
Yeah.
don't believe in all that, but they're just like more unconscious slaves, aren't they?
Well, it depends. It depends. It depends on really what kind of a slave you are. Either you are a slave at gunpoint, having been taken as booty in conflict, or you are a slave in the matrix, having been convinced,
Not knowing we're slaves.
not knowing that you're a slave, because the easiest slave to manage is a slave who thinks he's free. Right, right. That's why there is the national security state. You know, to watch
Big
the
brother.
thinking, Big Brother, to watch everyone's thinking and to observe what everyone is doing and
Anybody out of
saying.
bounds, they
That's
kinda
right.
go,
That's right. Then they
"You're
put
not
more
gonna
effort
follow
into
me."
that. Exactly. They put more effort into, if cultures begin to go a little haywire, they put more effort into the culture to bring it around so it's supportive of this fiat illusion. It's an illusion. You know? So, go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Go
I
ahead.
know you have a format here, but...
No, it's a conversation.
For this all to occur, they have to change the political system in this country. And they're doing it by creating situations that are so convincing that the people say, oh yes, we need that.
Yes, correct.
That's kind of the idea.
That is the idea. Exactly.
And that's where it's at right now.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
You
a
know.
process.
Exactly. So,
Everybody thinks it's changing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot. I don't know about everybody, but you know.
well, people that there is a transformation is occurring now, and
Right.
we're going to pull out of this and kind of
Things are gonna
get
be
back.
better.
We're going to get back to something that we never had, to a nostalgia. We'll get back nostalgically into a quality of civilization that we never actually owned. You know. So let's develop this idea. Let's develop this idea of the what it takes, therefore, to construct a human scale community. Now we've been talking a little bit about a non-human scale community that we all live in, right? We all live in this non-human scale community. Okay, so, and one of the instruments to manage an oppressive society is to create a state-sponsored spiritual system, right?
Based on fear.
Whatever, you know. Okay, but let's say it is based on fear. Yeah, it would be based on fear. You're going to go to hell, right?
Yeah.
If you don't do exactly.
Good, right.
Exactly. So in order to create a human scale community regarding spirituality, what are the qualities of that spirituality that have to...
Co-creating.
What are the qualities of that spirituality that need to be that you would expect in a human scale community?
Sharing.
All right, but that's in the present ones, right? But would there be
Non-hierarchical.
non-hierarchical? Therefore, no priesthood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
co-creative, right?
Okay,
I know.
okay, co-creative. Okay,
Yeah.
so there'd be no
We're all putting
priesthood.
it together.
No priesthood. Right.
No queen, no king.
Right. There'd be no hierarchy. Right. Would there be any money anywhere in it?
No.
No, there wouldn't be. There'd be no,
Would be
any kind of money would be inappropriate. Right.
Doing
No
it
money.
for the whole.
No money. In a human scale community, could a human scale community allow lethal force to operate as an instrument of the state?
No.
No, it couldn't. So no killing.
No.
Right.
Nobody overpowering anybody else.
No killing. Right. Not even no killing. You cannot do that. Which creates an interesting dilemma for if people should wake up and realize that they have been basically enslaved. You know, what do we do? What does a human scale community do with the fact that they wake up and have been enslaved? Now, the story that comes with human communities waking up is in our subconscious, is in our is in our thinking, and we remember that as villagers chasing werewolves or Draculas.
Vampire.
Yeah, that's how we remember that periodically human communities would wake up and realize that they had these monsters among them, you know.
Like riots.
Yeah, there would be insurrection, exactly, and they would chase them down. They would chase them down, and when you go into the archives, which are best indicated in the work of Watt, he's the most best. He indicates he does the most scholarship in terms of talking about published material, talking about the rise and fall or the apparent fall. Empires never fall because power never backs off. Power sucks the blood. An empire will suck the blood of its headquarters and then move to a new potential. We got to change tapes?
Yeah.
Okay.